I wasn't going to make any kind of content on iilluminaughtii because it's been talked about to death, but now I realise how serious it is. I kind of have to talk about it. And while it sounds silly because I'm only a channel with like 18k, because every time I post a video I instantly lose 40 subscribers for no apparent reason, and I used to have 19 but YouTube screwed me over. I have a feeling that I've used iilluminaughtii as a source. I couldn't tell you what video it is in, but I just have a memory of tagging like her and linking to a video in one of mine. And as somebody who used her as a source previously, I feel like I have a moral obligation to spread awareness about her. iilluminaughtii was originally exposed because she claimed that another YouTuber called Legal Eagle had plagiarized her because they used the same effect as her in a video, even though they've been using that effect for a long time. And then it's also been exposed that she's a terrible person who's kind of like Creepshow Art. Originally, I didn't understand the comparison. I now understand that comparison. I understand that comparison to a T. I get you. I hear you. And I'll explain as to why that is an apt comparison right now. So, the whole Legal Eagle thing happened and Blair apologized, and some people said that she didn't have to make it public that she apologized. I disagree. I think the demand for apologies is stupid, but if you have apologized, I think it's important to make it public, because if you don't share publicly that you've apologized and mean it, how are we supposed to know that it's happened? It's a weird thing online when people talk about public apologies. I don't think people should be forced to apologize just to appease other people. But on the other hand, if you have apologized and you genuinely have realized that you've done something wrong, you should probably also let people know that, because people are going to be shouting at you to apologize and they don't know that you've done it because we don't have access to your DMs. Of her previous collaboration channel, Sad Milk, came out, and I'm not going to make a joke about sour milk. Okay, it's the important thing. And they've all spoken up about Blair's behaviour and how she generally was a terrible human being. One of them came out and talked about how they moved to Colorado to live with her and how she lived like a hoarder. And I'm not going to speak too negatively on that, because I know people who have severe OCD disorders. Hoarding is actually an OCD disorder. A lot of people don't realise that. OCD is a disorder, but then also in the DSM-5, OCD is also a category of disorders, so it gets a bit confusing. But under the category of OCD is hoarding disorder, and it could be that she has a hoarding disorder. So I'm not going to hold her on that. I know it's a bit trickier when you live with other people, because the only other person that I know who's had a severe hoarding disorder was my great aunt, who lived alone. And she wasn't necessarily dirty either. There was no mold. She didn't just like make a mess and leave it. If she spilt milk or something, she'd clear it up. But then also every single cupboard in her kitchen had a tube of Pringles. And they were all neatly lined up, by the way. She didn't just chuck the Pringles in. They were very like a supermarket. They were all very neatly lined up, very bizarrely. So she wasn't dirty, but she just had an abundance of things. I remember when she died and we had to clean out her bedroom. In her wardrobe, imagine a massive wardrobe, very neatly and precisely stored in there were boxes of tea bags. I've not even seen supermarkets with that amount of tea bags. But my point being is, I'm not going to judge someone for having a hoarding disorder. Important though, that if you have people around you that are talking to you and saying you have a problem, because I can imagine at some point somebody in that house, I mean, she lived with Oz and this other person, I think it was Wonder, but I don't want to say that for sure. I'll call him W for now. So one of her co-workers, they flew out to live with her and Oz. Oz is somebody who she also worked with and was friends with. and he says that the house was disgusting. I can imagine that at some point Oz or W would have mentioned to her that this was a problem. I can't imagine she just did it and they didn't bring it up. So when somebody makes you aware that you have a problem, you then have a responsibility to seek help for that problem. I'm very hesitant to say fix the problem, because you can't necessarily fix a mental disorder or an obsessive compulsive disorder. You can't fix it. What you can do is you can find mechanisms and therapies specific to OCD disorders. That sounds a bit weird though. OCD, obsessive compulsive disorders. But you can find ways of treating it. It's like a terminal illness. Maybe you can't cure it, but you can find ways of being better about it. Especially if you have animals or children. I know Blair doesn't have children and Oz doesn't have children. There were no children in the house, but there were animals. I know her dog Casper was there. One thing I don't want to accuse her of, but something that she mentioned in her video regarding when she was talking to Oz, she says all the times Casper was in hospital or had a health problem. Casper's her dog. I don't know about you. I don't know if Casper was old or not, maybe an older dog who had problems. My dog is about 12 years old in human years. Not dog years, in human years. They've never been to the hospital or like the vet for an emergency issue. So it makes me wonder if this environment was a contributing factor to Casper's health. And I'm not accusing that of being the case. It does just make me wonder when she says to Oz, you were there for all of Casper's health scares. Maybe Casper is just a sickly dog or an older dog, but I'm sure living in those conditions couldn't have helped. There were other things that happened in regards to W. For example, she claimed he didn't do any work for her, but then also says there were only 2 streams to edit, which is weird. Like, yeah, you gotta give him the work to do. And there was a whole thing when it came to a car that W had, and that they made there was a contract in regards to this car. I'm gonna be real, I have no idea about cars or contracts. One thing I wish they taught in school is taxes and contracts and legal things like that, because you leave the education system having a perfect knowledge of Pythagorean theorem. I can't even say it. I know how to calculate the circumference of a circle. I do not know how to file a tax rebate. I'm not going to go in depth in regards to the car, but from what I can tell and what has been said by W, it was bogus. It wasn't a real contract, and she had no right to repossess his car in the middle of the night. In the middle of the night definitely gives away that it was a malicious move, because who just shows up in the middle of the night to repossess a car? In that car were also some of W's belongings, actually all of his belongings, everything that he owned in that car. And they weren't there anymore. She got them. So we're going to move on to the Click now. We're talking about the Click, and I've watched his video and I'm very impressed with the Click. The Click was onto something and brought the receipts, and we're all thankful for the Click. One thing that was probably really important is in Blair's video, she talks about how there was an undesirable in Click's server and he let him fester there for months. No, what happened was there was a creep that came in and started being creepy, and Click was asleep at this point because he's Swedish, I believe. He was asleep because it was 2 a.m. and so his mods kicked out the creep for him, and then he wakes up and he's like, wow, what happened? And then eventually learns that there was a creep and the creep had been kicked out. And that was it. That's amazing. What more could you possibly ask for? So there was another instance of some of his mods sharing just lewd artwork in the mod chat or the staff chat, and there were minors in that chat. And Click, basically, they said, look guys, we understand that this is a staff chat and you might just be like having a laugh with some of your friends, but you have to remember that there are minors in this chat. And they were like, oh crap, okay. And from what I understand, it didn't repeat, and they clarified that the staff chat has to adhere to the same rules as the server chat. Sounds reasonable. Sometimes you get carried away. Sometimes you're just having a laugh with a couple of friends in a server chat, and you forget that there are other people there that can see it. You know, sometimes that happened. It was a situation where people weren't trying to target these minors. They weren't trying to tag these minors. They weren't trying to involve the minors in it. There was another instance with the BDSM results test. You can take this test online. That's wildly inaccurate, by the way. I speak from experience. There was an example of where they were sharing their results because they took the test and they didn't realise there were minors in the chat, and they had to take them to the side and remind them. I don't know if this was staff in the main chat or if it was just a random person. I think it might have been mods. Yeah, I think mods in the main chat were doing it, and they were basically reminded. And the click is assured that, you know, he's shown ban history. He has. He's shown the amount of people he's banned. So they're willing to take action if needed and assess a situation. So in regards to the click's Discord, it's a big nothing burger. Then later on revealed, this is why the Creepshow Art comparison is apt. Apt? I was thinking of the word inapt, but also the word apt at the same time, and I said apt. What I'm trying to say is, the reason that the Creepshow Art comparison is apt is because it has since been revealed that Creepshow Art, see, I'm getting them confused already. Blair had alt accounts on Reddit and on Twitter trying to expose the clique for the terrible and horrific crimes of saying the N-word and the R-slur. So Blair is trying to expose him on alt accounts, replying to her own account, so the iilluminaughtii Reddit account. She's basically, she made an announcement saying that the clique had left Sad Milk, and then on her little alt account she's arguing with herself going, no Blair, tell the truth, the reason is because of all of this. And then they link like old videos of a teenage, the clique, saying slurs or whatever it was. She just had an argument with herself. That sounds familiar, doesn't it? Shannon Creepshow Art. That is bizarre. Are these two like twins? Like, they're secretly sisters. Is that something that, you know, it's tinfoil hat conspiracy theory, but they are like from the same tree. Like, the apple didn't fall. Why is that going into an American accent? Didn't fall far from that tree. That's why the Creepshow Art comparison is so apt, because it's nutty. Who does this? Who creates fake accounts to argue with yourself about being wrong about the thing? But it gets nuttier. Paid somebody $200 to have somebody find evidence for her of the clique saying the R slur. This girl has money to burn, doesn't she? She paid someone $200 to find just like a 2-second clip to make somebody look bad for saying the R slur. Amazing. Incredible. I couldn't possibly even elaborate on how nutty that is. What can you say? That's amazing. Can this person get help? Like, serious help? You had a falling out with somebody and it ended what he thought was amicably, and for months, if not maybe even longer than that, this girl is using an alt account to spread rumors and try and paint a narrative about him, and paying people to find things about him. And that's not all of it, people. So something that isn't new news recently been brought to my attention is that she accused Tommy C and Nicholas Diorio of making fun of her cancer and having a, how's a PC way of saying this, because this is going to end up on YouTube, baby in her tummy not making it. I'm sorry, I laughed because it's a really uncomfortable subject, but the way I've had to put it is so insane, because YouTube doesn't like certain words. But making fun of her for those things, come out saying we didn't even know that those things allegedly happened to you, so how can we make fun of it? She also, something I didn't know is that she was associated with Tommy C and they worked on stuff together, and I think she had privileges on his channel because they did certain projects together. And when they fell out because somebody told a fat joke and she didn't like it, she went through all of Tommy's videos that included her and deleted them all. And some of these videos had her, Tommy, and other people in. So she wasn't just deleting things that involved her, but other people. And it completely tanked his channel. Like, it ruined it because loads of views were just lost. Such an awful thing to do, and a petty thing to do, that you fall out with someone, so you just delete a bunch of their content. I was going to ask Blair, are you okay? But from everything I've discussed thus far in this stream, it's clear that she's not okay. Blair reminds me of a manic episode that just doesn't end. Like, she gets fixated on a person who she used to be friends with, and you know, it's obsessive, and she has to create fake accounts to spread rumours about them and lies about them and slander them and pay people to find dirt on them. It's like a manic episode that never ends. And I genuinely think there's something wrong with her. No one can live the way that she allegedly lives and be okay. No one can behave the way she does to people she used to be friends with and be okay. And this isn't me saying that everything she does is justified and she's a victim.